The holidays are usually a joyous time of year when everyone comes together. It's all about giving and being surrounded by people you love. But a lot of times it's also about shopping, especially on Black Friday. It's the time of year where everyone's looking for the best deal. And if you've worked in retail, you know how busy it gets. And of course, you've probably heard of the stampedes in different stores with people climbing over each other to get the best deal possible on items as simple as a TV. But what you don't usually hear about is someone being murdered. But today's story is about greed, manipulation, and what happens when the holidays are filled with horror and not cheer. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kimbyrleigha. If you've never been here before, it's nice to finally meet you. And I can't believe we're deep into fall now, with Thanksgiving having just passed. I'm about to change my set for the winter holiday. And this is the time of the year where it gets chillier and cozier. And it's also the time of year I like to change up my look a little bit, maybe add a festive touch, and that's where our new sponsor comes into play today, Thrive Causemetics. I'm sure you've seen these signature turquoise tubes all over your socials. I've been using their products for quite some time now, not only because of the quality, but also because of the cause. It's Thrive Causemetics. The word cause is in there for a reason. For every product purchase, Thrive Causemetics donates products and funds to help communities thrive all year long. I like buying a product with a purpose. It makes me feel good when the purchase of my favorite Thrive lipstick, for example, helps causes like fighting cancer, providing assistance to survivors of domestic situations, individuals facing homelessness, poverty, and so much more. You can see all they've accomplished on their website. The color that I'm wearing today right here is Maya. I don't usually wear a red. I don't think I have since the beginning of me doing true crime on this channel because I used to get comments that it was very distracting, but you know what? We're gonna try it again because I love red. This is the Impactful Semi-Permanent Smoothing Lipstick. It's long-lasting, moisturizing, and has a really nice satin finish. It's fade-free for up to 8 hours without bleeding, drying, or settling into your fine lines, so that's why it's perfect for when I'm here filming or just out and about. It's got botanical oils and vitamin E, so it's always comfortable. And I love that it comes in 12 different shades from everyday natural tones to vibrant statement-making colors. But what I think is really cool is each of their shades is inspired by incredible people in the Thrive Causemetics community, and you can read about their stories. So cozy up your look with Thrive Causemetics, a luxury beauty that gives back. Right now, you can get an exclusive 20% off your first order at thrivecausemetics.com/Kimber, and that's Thrive Causemetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/Kimber, for 20% off your first order. And I want to thank Thrive Causemetics so much for helping to make this video possible. Now, let's get into the case for today. So I meant to tell you, I have been a little under the weather, but not really like sick. It's just around the holidays. I don't know if some of you can relate to this, but I get a little sad because I don't have my family here. They're 3,000 miles away. And of course I have my daughter and John, but there's just something about getting together with your family during the holidays. And this year I'm not going to be able to do that. So you all are my family, and I'm so glad you're here with me every week. I appreciate it so much. I just want you all to know that, and I hope that I can be here for you as well. And I just thank you so much for watching all the time and being here, not even just for this channel, but also my second channel that I have with John, Dark Livity. We're so, so happy to be able to be doing that as well, and all the love that you've shown. But I just wanted to share that little moment. Maybe some of you can relate this holiday season. I'm so very grateful for everything and all of you, but I just wanted to share. Today, I'm going to be introducing you to Ashlea Ann Harris. She was born in Fort Worth, Texas on November 2nd, 1983. She was the youngest of 3 girls, born to Monica Cassidy and Thomas Harris. Her sisters were Carrie and Melissa. And for most people, it might be hard to stand out in a family of 3 girls, but Ashlea never had any trouble. Right from the beginning, her oldest sister, Melissa, knew there was something different about her. Melissa was 10 years old when Ashlea was born, so she remembers everything about her younger sister. She recalls how she used to pretend Ashlea was her baby when they were younger, creating a special bond between them. In her childhood years, Ashlea was described as being sort of a rough and tumble kind of kid. She paved her own path in life and didn't care much for painting her nails and playing with Barbie dolls, unlike her sisters. She liked sports, music, and art. Despite not having too many shared interests, the trio still cared deeply for one another and spent a lot of time together. Ashlea also had a special bond with her mother. Monica and Ashlea would go to bingo all the time, just the two of them. It's where they really got to know each other and grow closer. They would spend hours playing the game and laughing and creating lasting memories. At some point during her childhood, Ashlea's parents divorced, and her mother, Monica, remarried to a man named Chuck. It was tough with all the changes happening, but Ashlea and her sisters persevered and went on with their regular routines. The Harris family eventually found their way towards creating the even bigger, loving, blended family. Both Monica and Tommy remarried, bringing new partners into their lives and the lives of their children. Actually, over time, Ashlea developed a very close relationship with her stepdad, Chuck, and he became a very important figure in her life. She grew into a smart and kind teenager. Ashlea was described as the kind of person who loved everyone and had a natural zest for life. She had plenty of friends and even a few boyfriends in high school. She was one of those people that never had trouble making friends and meeting new people. She was never alone, constantly surrounding herself by people she cared about and that cared about her. Both her stepfather, Chuck, and her father, Thomas, were both law enforcement officers, and everyone thought that Ashlea would follow in their footsteps. She did express some interest, but at the end of the day, after graduating high school, she began working at Blockbuster Video in the meanwhile until she found out what she wanted to do. And it was there where she met a customer named Laura Love. Laura was a few years older than Ashlea, and over the course of the 8 months, the two of them got to know one another and became the best of friends. Now, Ashlea was the type of person that attracted both males and females, and she always considered herself straight. In high school, she had boyfriends. However, everything changed when she met Laura. Their friendship blossomed into something more, and during this time, Ashlea began to question her own sexuality. She found herself drawn to Laura in a way that she never experienced before. The more time they spent together, the stronger their connection became, and sooner or later, Ashlea couldn't deny the feelings that were developing towards Laura. So after much contemplation and soul-searching, Ashlea came to the realization that she had fallen in love with Laura, and Laura shared those same feelings. It was a revelation that excited but also frightened Ashlea because it meant challenging the identity that she held onto for so long. As she began to explore her identity and become comfortable with it, she came to believe that she had truly found a community where she felt comfortable. It wasn't that she was necessarily uncomfortable in her other friendship circles, but it was like a puzzle piece just clicked into place, and she finally had a full picture of who she was. Despite her initial uneasy feelings and confusion, Ashlea couldn't deny the deep emotional bond that she shared with Laura. And with time, Ashlea and Laura decided to take their relationship to the next level, which meant Ashlea would reveal her secret. She would fully commit to Laura and let the world know. When it came time to tell her loved ones, it didn't exactly go smoothly. Many of Ashlea's friends were accepting and told her it made no difference who she was with. They were going to love Ashlea no matter what. But when Ashlea told her mother, it was a different story. Ashlea got the courage to reveal her true self to her mom, Monica, and her stepdad, Chuck, in 2004. With honesty and vulnerability, she shared that she was identifying as a lesbian and she had a girlfriend. In response, Monica expressed that deep down in her heart, she always knew this about her daughter. But Monica admitted that she needed time to fully accept and understand this new aspect of Ashlea's life. Naturally, Ashlea was hurt, but she agreed to give her mom some time. And Monica, she was deeply religious, and she was struggling to reconcile the love she had for her daughter with the teachings that she knew from the Bible. So Monica prayed. She wanted guidance in the situation, and eventually she came to a conclusion. God had given her Ashlea, and he wouldn't have done that if she was meant to just throw away their relationship. He would not have given her a daughter to protect and love and clothe and feed, and then just take her away. So Monica decided that she loved her daughter more than anything else, and she couldn't imagine a world where they didn't talk anymore. So in the end, she and Ashlea mended the relationship and resumed going to their bingo nights. And Ashlea and Laura remained together. Laura Love revealed that Ashlea was generous and caring as a girlfriend throughout the 3 years they dated. However, the relationship eventually did come to an end due to their divergent aspirations in life. Laura was older, she was ready to settle down and have kids, and Ashlea was having fun. She was trying to figure out her path in life, and she had no idea where it would take her. However, the two girls still hung out as friends, and they spent plenty of time in their mutual friend group. Despite parting ways romantically, Ashlea and Laura managed to maintain a strong friendship over the years, and Laura recalled Ashlea's excitement when she received the news of being hired at American Eagle Outfitters in the Hewlin Mall in Fort Worth, Texas in the fall of 2011. Now, Ashlea loved this job. She liked it because she got to meet new people every day, and she also took pride in her work. Retail just suited her so well, and over time, she worked her way up to assistant manager at the Hewlin location. Her boss, Chris Cravey, said that she was one of his favorite employees. Other people who worked at the store had nothing but great things to say about Ashlea. One of them even commented that she would go the extra mile for any of the employees on her shift. She didn't just teach them about work, she taught them about life. And she was one of the happiest people they knew. I can actually tell from her pictures that she exudes that happiness and that joy. She's always smiling, and I can tell she's one of those goofy, fun people, and that's exactly the way she was described by friends. One of Ashlea's remarkable qualities was her ability to inspire her staff. She had a unique talent for recognizing the potential in others, even if they couldn't see it in themselves. Ashlea believed in her employees and encouraged them to strive for greatness. Whether through her words of encouragement or leading by example, she motivated her team to be the best versions of themselves. In addition to her life lessons with her coworkers, Ashlea loved to document her everyday life on social media. The topics range from what she was wearing that day, whether she was feeling tired or happy, and in fact, many of these videos were taken while she was on shift because she loved to share with her friends. Work was one of her favorite places to be, and it truly showed on camera. She was sort of a vlogger, and back then it was much more rare in the early 2000s. And looking at all the outfits she wore in those videos, it made me so nostalgic about those days. I wore the same style. A lot of us did the Abercrombie or American Eagle shirts, the jeans with the holes in them, the trucker caps. It's such a blast from the past. But a few years had gone by with Ashlea dating people on and off, but nothing really stuck. And one day in the summer of 2014, she went out to a restaurant with some friends, and Ashlea had been having a really bad day, and she wasn't in her usual chipper mood. And their waitress, April Moffat, she thought Ashlea was so cute and she was trying to get her to smile, but she didn't have any luck. At the time, April, not knowing Ashlea at all, didn't think much of it and proceeded with her shift as usual. But destiny had a path for them. A few weeks later, Ashlea recognized April and reconnected through social media. It was like the universe conspired to bring them back together somehow. When Ashlea saw April on Instagram, she followed her. And then the two girls got to talking and decided to meet up and take their dogs on a walk. Ashlea's dog Nala was her biggest priority. No matter what she had going on in her life, she made sure Nala was taken care of. And April brought along her dog Cooper. April said that she and Ashlea had an undeniable connection. She described Ashlea as having a magnetic force that made it hard not to love her instantly. After the walk with her dogs, Ashlea and April were practically inseparable, and soon they became a couple. And by the end of the summer of 2014, Ashlea's life was going really well. She found herself content and fulfilled both in her career and her personal life. And she'd been contemplating a career shift. She was actually considering joining the loss prevention department at American Eagle Outfitters. This decision was actually spurred by a robbery at the store. It happened on August 24th at 1 o'clock in the morning. It was all caught on video. A robber dressed in all black went behind the counter and took $18,000 from their safe. The robbery occurred the day after Texas tax-free weekend. Once a year, Texas allows people to purchase certain items tax-free, like shoes, clothing, backpacks, and usually school supplies. And this is for parents to lessen the burden during back-to-school shopping. And because of this, tax-free weekend is one of the busiest times a year for retail stores like American Eagle. And they make more money than usual, and that is why the store was hit the next day. Ashlea, being influenced by her father's, both stepdad and bio father's career in law enforcement, it inspired her to look over that surveillance video and work closely with loss prevention to try to identify this perpetrator. She believed she could contribute to the company's safety and security going forward, and she hoped that she could work her way up to a position in loss prevention. Meanwhile, there was something else Ashlea was trying to work on: her relationship with April. Like most couples, the relationship had its ups and downs. And towards the end of November 2014, the two had decided to take a small break to reevaluate their feelings. The plan was for April to go over Ashlea's on November 28th, or Black Friday, as most of us refer to it, the biggest shopping day of the year. The day after Thanksgiving, when all the biggest sales happen to prepare for the holiday season. Ashlea and April planned to meet up so they could talk about what they wanted to do moving forward. However, the day before they planned to meet, they decided to postpone the conversation. Unfortunately, they would never get the chance to mend the relationship, because just before 8 a.m. on November 28th, Black Friday, a 911 call comes in from the River Ranch Apartments in the suburb of Fort Worth, Texas. That's the apartment complex that Ashlea lived in. One of her neighbors, Patrick Sweet, who lived directly below her, the two knew each other, they were friends, and he had woken up around 7:30 that morning to loud voices and a hard thump right above him. A few minutes later, he heard Ashlea's front door shut, so he figured she was going to work. Patrick rolled over and tried to go back to sleep, but before he could, his carbon monoxide alarm started to go off. He was confused, so he began to investigate, and this is when he noticed that there was water leaking from the ceiling of his bathroom. Putting two and two together, Patrick believed there could be a fire in Ashlea's apartment, so he quickly called 911 to report it. Now, I have a little bit of this audio. I'm going to play it for you now.
Fire department, what's the address of your emergency?
Yeah, hi. I'm live over at River Ranch Apartments, and I think there's a fire upstairs in the apartment above me. Stay with me. I'll get someone in there out.
Patrick was not the only one that noticed something was wrong. By the time he was dressed and headed outside, a small crowd had started to form. Among them were friends of Ashlea's, all wondering what was going on. One friend, Jeff Kaiser, decided not to wait for the fire department. When he saw where the fire was coming from, and it was his friend, 31-year-old Ashlea Harris's apartment, he ran up to her door, looking through the windows to see if she was inside. Just as he was about to attempt to open the door, one of the on-site maintenance workers came running upstairs and helped Jeff kick the door down. Immediately, Ashlea's dog Nala came darting out of the apartment, and luckily she was caught by bystanders before she could get very far. Now, Jeff and that worker made 3 attempts to enter the apartment and search for Ashlea. They kept having to run back to the front door to catch their breath each time before trying to go back because the smoke was so thick and water was spraying from the sprinkler system. Jeff yelled for Ashlea as he crawled midway into the apartment to the kitchen before the smoke forced him to go back out for fresh air. They had seconds to search with each attempt, but the smoke was too overpowering for them to make any progress. I'm actually impressed with their efforts, risking their own lives for another human being. By 8 o'clock a.m., the fire department was on the scene. When Fort Worth Fire Department Lieutenant Jared Pavlefko arrived, a resident told him that there was a possibility that someone was inside the apartment. But at that point in time, everyone who knew Ashlea believed she was already on her way or at work, considering it was Black Friday, the biggest shopping day of the year. They assumed she wasn't going to miss that. And they thought the fire had somehow started after she left for work. Maybe the stove was left on, a straightening iron, a candle, or something like that. But they were all trying to get a hold of her and let her know what was going on, but no one could get a response. They thought maybe she was busy opening the store. At least that's what they hoped. Firefighters were entirely unprepared for the scene that they would find inside Ashlea's apartment once the blaze had been put out. The fire lieutenant could tell that this fire had started in the bedroom, specifically on the bed, which had been badly damaged. He opened a window to the room to allow all the smoke to clear. It was actually easy for firefighters to tell that this fire was not an accident and that they needed to call the Fort Worth Police Department and get an arson inspector on the scene. Not just because they suspected foul play when it came to the fire, but because of what they found in the middle of the bedroom floor. On the floor, in front of the bed, was the lifeless body of a female, and they could tell she did not die as a result of the fire. The fire lieutenant grabbed her arm, and that's when he noticed that her wrists were duct taped. She had been bound and badly beaten. After he was unable to detect a pulse, he radioed for a request for the police and the CSI to come to his location. Then the team quickly retreated out of the apartment to preserve it as a crime scene. Ashlea's friends were still waiting outside for some sort of update, and they weren't sure what to make of the firefighters' behavior. It wasn't until police showed up and began to put crime scene tape around the building that it began to dawn on them that maybe they weren't able to reach Ashlea because she had been inside when the fire started. Laura Love remembers how much she used to love Black Friday before that day in 2014. It used to be her favorite day of the year. She loved to go shopping and she loved a great deal. But that year changed everything. She got a call from a friend telling her that Ashlea's apartment was on fire, and Laura was shocked. By 8:45 a.m., Wallace E. Hood Jr., a veteran arson investigator with the Fort Worth Fire Department, was on the scene. And by that time, the fire in the apartment had already been extinguished. And during his investigation, he located multiple origins of this fire, including the bed, on the victim's body, and in the closet. He noticed the smoke detector had actually been removed and was underneath the mattress. In his professional analysis of the scene, he believed the ignition source was some form of open flame, such as a match or a cigarette lighter, and he ruled out all accidental sources of ignition, concluding that this fire was set on purpose. As a matter of fact, he located an empty bottle of rubbing alcohol It was found in the bedroom on the floor, and there were some liquid stains burned into the bed frame, as well as burn marks of a liquid pattern on the victim's body. It looked like the alcohol was used as an accelerant and poured directly on the various points of origin to start the fire. Typically, though, most arsonists will not use rubbing alcohol for this purpose because it doesn't burn fast enough or long enough or hot enough to truly be effective. He also added that he thought the fire might have actually been an afterthought, or at least not part of this person's original plan. Wallace believed this for two reasons. The first was the use of that rubbing alcohol as an accelerant, which, again, not typical. And the second reason was that the sprinklers in the apartment were obvious. If someone had planned to set a fire and actually put thought into it, they would have looked for the sprinklers. These sprinklers helped stop the fire before it even burned away the evidence. So they would have knocked them down or maybe not even started this fire at all. The investigators thanked him for his time and used his findings as the foundation for their criminal investigation. One thing was for sure. This was an arson, and it looked like the fire was set to cover up a murder. Next, the homicide investigators were called in. When Fort Worth detective Jerry Cedillo, who was on call that weekend for Thanksgiving, and his partner Ernie Pate arrived at the River Ranch Apartments where Ashlea lived around 10:22 a.m., there was a crowd of her loved ones outside. 40 to 50 of her friends, family, and coworkers were standing outside of the apartment. These detectives were not expecting that, and they had to get the situation under control. It was very emotional. They were all waiting for news about Ashlea. They wanted information, but they would have to wait. Once the scene was cordoned off and secured, the detectives made their way upstairs and into Ashlea's unit. Detective Cedillo looked around in the living room, which was already decorated for Christmas with a tree and holiday pillows and even wrapping paper stacked up next to a wall like Ashlea had been in the middle of wrapping gifts. But the detective didn't notice anything out of the ordinary, nothing that indicated a struggle had occurred in that area. But of course, he was directed towards Ashlea's bedroom, and he was immediately confronted with the sight of the victim lying on the ground. He could tell that her hands had been duct taped behind her back, and her ankles were duct taped as well. She had been bludgeoned and suffered serious head and face trauma, possibly even tortured. They carefully turned over her body, and that's when they saw that her throat had actually been cut, and she had been set on fire. There was evidence of a very violent struggle. This was a gruesome murder. There was so much blood that had soaked into the carpet and actually appeared to have dyed it red. The detectives began to look around the apartment for clues and to collect and mark evidence. Ashlea's makeup bag and her wallet were lying open on her bathroom counter. Detectives matched the driver's license picture to the victim and preliminarily identified her as Ashlea Ann Harris. It didn't take long for the news of this fire to spread throughout the community, and word got to Ashlea's best friend, Stephanie Naylor. Just like Laura Love, Stephanie got a call from a mutual friend telling her that Ashlea's apartment was on fire, and she was like, "What do you mean?" So she raced over, concerned about her friend's well-being, and she joined that growing crowd. Among the people there was Ashlea's boss from American Eagle, Chris Cravey, and he kept asking authorities if he could speak to Ashlea, but the response they received was that she was unavailable at the moment. So hours went by, and they were still waiting, assuming that Ashlea had already been taken care of or was being interviewed about the blaze. But all that hope was dashed when the coroner vehicle pulled up. Chris Cravey lost it. He knew what it meant in that moment. At the same time, the detectives walked towards the crowd and began asking them questions. The very first one brought Ashlea's best friend Stephanie to her knees. Detective Cedillo asked if Jeremiah 29:11 meant anything to them. Stephanie fell to the ground. Her knees just gave out from under her. She responded, "That's Ashlea's tattoo." And sadly, it was true. Ashlea was known for her tattoos, and she had already been preliminarily identified by her license, but also by a tattoo she had on the side of her body, her first initial and last name. But Ashlea also had that scripture from Jeremiah 29:11 tattooed, and it read, quote, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future," end quote. But Ashlea did not have a future. Her life had ended, and those words seem so empty when all hope is gone and no future remains for Ashlea. Her friends knew she was dead, but they didn't know how this could have happened. This is when the next phase of the investigation started. There were dozens of potential witnesses just waiting right outside, and they would need to interview all of them before they started to slip away. So police directed everyone who was waiting outside to go into the apartment's leasing office, and they made it clear that anyone who tried to leave without their permission would be arrested for not cooperating with a police investigation. One person was missing from the scene, Ashlea's girlfriend, April. Now remember, they had taken a break, and they were initially supposed to reconnect that day to talk about their future together. That conversation was supposedly called off. But now Ashlea's dead. So of course, one of the people on scene texted April around 1 o'clock that afternoon and simply asked her if she's checked on her girl, that there was a fire in her apartment. And not too long after that, someone else texted April with "call me." So she made that call. She was terrified that something happened to Nala, Ashlea's dog, assuming that Ashlea was at work. So she asked, "Is Nala okay?" And the friend said, "Yes." So April asked, "Well, where's Ashlea?" And that's when the friend simply said, "Ashlea is gone." Well, this didn't register with April. She was like, "Gone? Gone from where? The apartment?" So she was like, "Well, is she okay?" And that's when the friend was more clear. She said, "No, Ashlea is dead." April was in total disbelief. She just threw her phone across the room because she did not believe this could be true. Now, Ashlea's mom, Monica, and her stepfather, Chuck, were out of town when all of this was happening. And initially, they were informed that a fire had broken out at Ashlea's apartment complex, but they had very limited information, and they hoped Ashlea's unit was not affected. But then, Chuck got a call from Ashlea's biological father, Tommy Harris. Tommy had been informed by detectives that Ashlea had been killed, and now he had the heartbreaking job of relaying this message to Ashlea's mother and stepfather. Monica saw Chuck wiping tears away from his face as he spoke on the phone, and she knew that her prayers that Ashlea was safe had not been answered. This was just the beginning of the horrifying news this family would receive. Next to receive the news was Ashlea's sister, Melissa. Chuck tried calling her, but didn't get an answer, so he left a message with her husband. And he ended up calling Melissa, and by the tone of his voice, she knew that something was wrong. So she shouted, "What happened to my mom?" thinking at her mother's age that she could have possibly been in an accident or died. But that's when she heard him say, "It's not your mom. It's Ashlea." She was not expecting to hear that. It was unbelievable. And at this point, the family had limited information about what had happened to their loved one. It would be much worse than they could have ever imagined. Back at the scene, investigators were questioning Ashlea's friends. Now, Detective Cedillo noted that in the wallet where Ashlea's ID was found, her credit and debit cards and cash were still inside, and no other high-value items were taken from her apartment. It seemed like the motive was definitely not robbery. So to Cedillo, this meant that whoever murdered Ashlea had known her personally because they had to have had an alternative motive, one that appeared to be much deeper from the viciousness of this crime. In order to get to the bottom of this, he decided it was time to question those witnesses. One of them was Alexis Torres. She explained she had seen Ashlea the previous afternoon at a gathering with friends on Thanksgiving Day. And according to her, Ashlea had to work on Thanksgiving in order to prep the store, American Eagle, for Black Friday. It was going to be a rush the next day. Ashlea was scheduled to work from 6 p.m. to 3 o'clock in the morning. The mall actually closed at 8 p.m., but the after-hours Black Friday preparations would then begin thereafter, and she would most likely not get off work until after 3. So their group of friends decided to have an early Thanksgiving dinner so that Ashlea could attend. Now, during dinner, Alexis had agreed to go over Ashlea's apartment during her shift to stay with Nala, and this was not a strange request. Everyone knew how much Nala meant to Ashlea, and she wouldn't want to leave her alone too long. Ashlea finally arrived back home from work at around 3:40 a.m. in those early morning hours of November 28th, and Alexis was there to greet her. They visited with one another in Ashlea's apartment until about 4:45 in the morning. At that point, Ashlea needed some sleep because she told Alexis she had to take a nap before waking up and heading right back into work for Black Friday. Alexis also told Detective Cedillo that Ashlea had asked her to stay over, but she couldn't because she had her dad's truck that night and she needed to take it back to him. That was the last time she saw Ashlea. Alexis said she remembers Ashlea locking the door when she left. Then, about 2 hours later at 6:56 a.m., Ashlea had attempted to call Alexis, but she missed that call. So about 2 to 3 minutes later, when she noticed she had a missed call from Ashlea, Alexis said she tried to call her back, but she was unsuccessful in reaching her. If Alexis's story is true, then that meant whoever committed this heinous crime had done so between the hours of 6:56 a.m. and 7:30 a.m. that morning. And that's not a big window of opportunity. So Cedillo decided to keep his eye on Alexis, but he knew he had a lot more interviewing to do. Now remember the man who called 911, Patrick Sweet? Well, when he was interviewed by detectives, he provided some very crucial information, much more than he did on that 911 call. On the morning of November 28th, he was awakened by what sounded like a scream, and then he glanced at his clock, which showed it was 7:30 a.m. This was only about 30 minutes from the time that Alexis missed Ashlea's call. So Patrick laid in bed wondering what was going on upstairs, and that's when he heard a loud thud right above him, and he could hear labored breathing. Patrick was sitting there thinking, what should he do? And that's when he heard Ashlea's front door close. He was thinking it was her going to work, so he got up and he looked outside for confirmation. And he did this because what he heard was concerning. When Patrick looked out the window, he saw a darkly tinted black Infiniti driving away, and that was not the vehicle that Ashlea drove. But not wanting to assume the worst, he figured maybe a friend or a coworker of hers had picked her up for work. So he laid back down and tried to go back to sleep. But before he could, his carbon monoxide detector went off. So now he went to check his apartment for problems, and that's when he noticed that water was dripping from his ceiling in the bathroom. This was from the automatic sprinkler system, and it was triggered by the smoke and fire. And he figured it must be happening upstairs since it wasn't happening in his unit. And that is when he called 911. But why hadn't he mentioned the screams? Well, he told detectives that after calling 911, he then took some of his belongings and moved his car across the street away from the apartment building. Before firefighters arrived, he saw a neighbor from the back of the building and one of the maintenance men enter Ashlea's apartment. At that point, he was unaware that Ashlea was inside until later when he saw the looks on the firefighters' faces. At that point, he realized that the noises he heard earlier were out of the ordinary, and that's why he told detectives about them. I know no one wants to assume the worst, but if you hear something like that, I would encourage you to just call 911. I know that sometimes operators will give you a hard time if you didn't see anything, but it's better they come out and check because you'd rather be safe than sorry. Now detectives interviewed Jeff Kaiser, and that's the friend who kicked in Ashlea's door with the maintenance person. He said he woke up to the sound of fire alarms that same morning. He quickly got dressed and ran over to the building where Ashlea lived. He saw her truck parked outside, so when a neighbor said they thought that smoke was coming from her unit, Jeff didn't hesitate. He ran upstairs and he kicked open her door. Jeff said the door was locked, that the deadbolts were engaged, which was actually interesting to detectives. How did the killer gain entry to her apartment if her doors were locked? But now they have another clue. Ashlea's white Dodge pickup. Detective Cedillo wanted to search inside, but the keys to that vehicle were missing. They searched the apartment but couldn't find where Ashlea kept them or had put them. Could the killer have taken them and then locked Ashlea's door behind them? It was a possibility. The crime scene was still being processed. So for now, Detective Cedillo moved on and interviewed another neighbor, Stephen Lee. He was a former law enforcement officer. He lived right downstairs and diagonally across from Ashlea. According to Stephen, he had the very same routine every morning. He would go outside and smoke a cigarette around 7 a.m. and just watch the parking lot. And he did this every day due to his background as an officer. He said he found it peaceful. That morning, he noticed one car that didn't belong. It was a black Infiniti G35 with a faded toll tag sticker on the roof, and it was parked right next to Ashlea's white pickup truck. While this car stuck out to him and he'd never seen it in the parking lot before, he wasn't actually suspicious because it was the holidays. Anyone could be there visiting family or friends, but Stephen said the car was still parked there when he left for work around 7:30 a.m. But recall that Patrick also noticed this car and said it was driving away sometime after 7:30, because that's when he first woke up to those screams. So now Cedillo goes back to the people he already interviewed and asked them if they knew anything about a black Infiniti, and they said no. However, Alexis passed this information on to Chris Cravey, who was still waiting in the crowd. Now, earlier that morning, one of his other assistant managers had called him to say that Ashlea had not shown up for her shift and they couldn't get a hold of her. They had also heard a rumor that her apartment might be on fire. So Chris rushed over there to her complex, hoping that he could help Ashlea in some way. But of course, we know what happened after he arrived. Now, when he hears this new information, his heart sank, and he ran as fast as he could to speak with detectives. Chris was confident he knew whose car that was. Chris tells Cedillo he had a former employee who drove a black Infiniti G35. Their name was Carter Cervantes. To Cedillo's surprise, Chris makes him aware that Carter is a 25-year-old woman. I guess Carter's usually a boy's name, I don't know. But this wasn't too much to go on. Many people who live in this area work at establishments nearby, like the mall. But Chris tells Cedillo that Carter worked at the Amarillo, Texas location that's actually 5 hours away. So now it seemed even more of a remote possibility that this woman could have been all the way over in Fort Worth. Many people drive Infiniti G35s. It's one of the most popular models. So Cedillo thanks Chris for this information, but then goes back to focus on the evidence at the crime scene. He was there until after 1:30 that morning. It had been a long day, so Cedillo decided to head home and get some sleep before continuing with the investigation. However, no matter what he tried to do, he could not stop thinking about this case, and that must be so hard. I know that I'd be tossing and turning. So in the early morning hours, he decided he'd had enough, and he got up to start his day. He had nothing to go on except the name Chris had given him of the woman who drove that black Infiniti. So he decided to look her up, and he found her address. And to his surprise, she was living approximately 2 miles from Ashlea's apartment. So this could mean it was normal for her to be in that area. Maybe she was visiting a friend, or maybe she was connected to the crime. She was already connected to Ashlea through the fact that they both worked for American Eagle. So Cedillo figured that he would dig deeper. He decided to drive by that address on file in the early morning hours of Saturday, November 29th. But there was no sign of a black Infiniti in the parking complex. So Cedillo decided to wait outside for Carter to emerge from her residence. Meanwhile, he called Chris for all the information he had on this former employee. Chris explained that initially Carter was hired at the location in Amarillo, Texas, and she worked there for a considerable amount of time. By the time she was 24, she'd worked her way up to assistant manager. From what Chris gathered from other employees, Carter was nice to your face and tried to be your friend, but you actually wanted to be on her good side because once she had something against you, it seemed like she would do whatever it took to make sure you were working in a living hell. Lots of drama surrounded her when it came to her interactions with other store employees. But while she wasn't anyone's favorite manager, nothing too major happened. It was kind of the usual office gossip. There were no rules broken until Carter hired 19-year-old David Mallory. Not only did she give him special preferential treatment, but it was rumored that the two of them were romantically involved, which was against the rules. She was his superior. She was in charge of his payroll, his schedule, who he worked with, and it wasn't allowed. When word traveled to their district manager, Carter was given 2 choices: quit or get transferred to another location. This wasn't that out of the ordinary. It happens. People meet at work and they get involved with one another. And Carter wasn't a terrible employee, so they gave her those options. She chose to move to a different location. That way, both she and her new boyfriend could remain gainfully employed and stay together. For whatever reason, Carter decided to move 6 hours away to work at the Fort Worth American Eagle location at the Hulen Mall, the same location that Ashlea was working at as an assistant manager as well. Now, employment for Carter's much younger boyfriend at the Amarillo location did not last very long. Maybe he was only working there to be close to Carter because after she left, he missed 3 shifts in a row, which means you get automatically terminated. He was put in their system as not suitable for rehire at any American Eagle location, and eventually he moved in with Carter all the way in Fort Worth. Soon after Carter began working at the location, word got around to Chris that Carter had something against Ashlea, who was loved by everyone. She was regarded as like the mother of that store. Chris thought Ashlea was a phenomenal employee, so he inquired about this supposed tension. Lindsay Green, another American Eagle employee, told Chris she believed that Carter saw Ashlea as her competition because Carter was trying to catch the attention of the district manager so that she could get a promotion. Well, that's not that out of the ordinary. It's pretty normal that there's some sort of competition between employees. But then in June 2014, Chris had to take a leave of absence for medical reasons. And since he knew Ashlea longer, he trusted her to manage the store while he was gone. And she was temporarily moved into a manager position and was appointed to run the entire store. Well, that didn't seem to go over well with Carter, but Chris was back from surgery before any problems occurred. However, while Chris was out, Carter found a very creative way To circumvent American Eagle's system, she was able to hire her boyfriend David at the Fort Worth location. What did she do? She just altered David's social security number in the database, making it look like he was a brand new employee so that do not hire alert, it didn't show up. None of the employees at the store knew David, so it never raised any red flags. But then, just 2 months later, in August on the 24th, the Fort Worth location was robbed. Remember, this happened the day after tax-free weekend, and I told you that once a year, Texas allows people to purchase certain items tax-free. It's one of the busiest times of year for retail stores like American Eagle. The day after, the money was collected and still in the safe. Well, Chris tells Cedillo that Ashlea was the one who found the safe open with $18,000 missing when she opened the store the following morning. And the footage showed an individual walk straight to the safe and open it. The thing is, you had to have a key in order to gain access. This meant this person was in possession of one of the store keys because they easily opened it, took the money, and walked right out of the store. They knew it had to be someone who worked at American Eagle, either in the past or the present, because they didn't trip the alarm or even have to search around. They just went straight to where they knew the money would be. Remember, Ashlea was interested in possibly working with loss prevention, so she diligently looked over that video footage from 1:14 a.m. on August 24th, and we have this footage here. Upon further investigation, the key was found left inside the safe, and it belonged to an assistant manager named Yasmin. But Yasmin had not closed the store the night before the theft occurred, and she didn't appear to be the person in the video. It was apparent that the back door had been left open just a crack, which allowed this individual to enter. Now, everyone believed this had to be an inside job, given all of this evidence. Ashlea was confident that the person who came inside was David Mallory, and by extension, Carter, since she was his girlfriend and she had closed the store the night before. Yasmin informed Chris that she had left her store keys unattended on a table for approximately 5 minutes the previous day, while Carter was in that area folding jeans. Later that night at closing, Carter insisted on being the one to take out the trash, even though normally she assigned that task to someone else. The trash was taken out through the back door, and when she came back inside, they know she failed to secure the door on purpose. It made perfect sense. Also, when they called the police and also called Carter that morning to tell her they needed all hands on deck, Carter responded with, "I don't know what the big deal is. Insurance can cover this." And until this point, Chris had been completely unaware that Carter had hired David to work at the store. And once all these pieces came together, Chris and Ashlea informed Carter she was suspended until further notice, so she handed over her store keys calmly and then just exited the store. Then 1 week later, Chris called Carter and told her she had been terminated for leaving the store unsecured. She was really upset, and she requested the regional manager's phone number. Despite everyone believing that Carter and David were responsible, they were never arrested or formally declared suspects. In fact, this incident would have probably been insignificant to the case at hand if it wasn't for the fact that Ashlea was the one to say something about thinking this was Carter. And even though she was never charged with theft, she was let go from her position at the company. And after this, David did it again. He stopped showing up for his shifts and he was fired, just like he was at the other location. So after hearing all this, Detective Cedillo was more sure than ever they were on the right track. Based on his findings, he put in an application for 2 search warrants. The first was for David and Carter's cell phone records, and the second were for their vehicles. The evidence found in both would be shocking, but for now it was a waiting game. Cedillo and his partner, Ernie Pate, were outside in their vehicles parked in Carter's parking lot. They identified a white Cadillac that matched the license plate and description of the one David owned. Now Cedillo had his eyes on both cars as he waited. 4 hours later, at 7:45 a.m., he saw the lights on the black Infiniti flash like someone had remotely unlocked the doors, and sure enough, Cedillo observed Carter and David emerge from the complex and walk through the parking lot towards the vehicle. David gets in the driver's seat, and Carter jumps in beside him in the passenger side. Then they drove away, with Cedillo following close behind an unmarked car. The detectives could not believe where they were headed. They pulled right into the parking lot of the Hulen Mall, which is where the American Eagle was, where Ashlea worked. Cedillo was automatically suspicious. I mean, they were driving where a murder victim was last seen before she returned home to be killed and set on fire. Not to mention, It's where 2 people had been accused of robbing 2 months earlier. So Cedillo knew it was also too early for mall patrons to be in the mall. The only people inside would be employees. He knew that both David and Carter had been fired from their jobs at American Eagle. So why were they headed there? When David parked the car, only Carter got out and walked into the mall by herself, wearing black pants, shoes, a black scarf, and a dark gray sweatshirt. Cedillo parked his car and followed Carter while Pate stayed back to question David. When questioned, David told Detective Pate that he drove Carter over to the mall so she could fill out new employee paperwork at the Aeropostale store. She had recently been hired there. Pate relayed this information to Cedillo as he proceeded inside the mall to see if it was true, and Pate stayed with David. And that's when he learned that he was driving without a license, and this is a misdemeanor in Texas, so he was able to take David into custody. Their goal was to talk to him and secure the Black Infinity for analysis. They were still waiting on search warrants to be approved. Meanwhile, Cedillo was speaking with the manager at Aeropostale, who was telling him he had no idea who Carter was, and he definitely had not hired her. This confirmed the detective's suspicions, and he headed for American Eagle to see if he could find Carter there. His thought was that she was there to rob the store after the biggest sale of the year. It's when the most money would be in that safe, and Carter's former coworkers had told Chris that she had once joked, I'm putting air quotes, joked, to say if she was ever going to steal a deposit, it would be on Black Friday or tax-free weekend. Well, we know that she and David possibly already took that $18,000 on tax-free weekend. So Cedillo was convinced she was trying to get her hands on even more cash this time. Retail stores can bring in anywhere from $70,000 to even over $100,000 in cash after Black Friday, and Carter knew that. But instead of finding Carter at the front of American Eagle, he found Chris waiting outside a locked gate. He asked Chris, "Why aren't you opening the door?" And he said, well, the corporate office had changed the lock after hearing about Ashlea's murder, and he was waiting on someone to bring him the new key. Now, Detective Cedillo was kind of caught off guard. The reason for this is that he had made sure not to tell anyone that the only thing missing from Ashlea's apartment was her key ring. Only law enforcement knew that information. On that ring was the key to her truck, which was still in the parking lot, her keys to her apartment, and her keys to the American Eagle store. All of them were missing. And of course, detectives noted that her apartment door had been locked before her neighbor broke it down. This confirmed that whoever killed Ashlea had also stolen her keys. Cedillo had put 2 and 2 together. Carter knew Ashlea had the keys to the store since she was the other assistant manager. It was all coming together. Cedillo asked Chris why the locks were changed, because he hadn't told Chris that Ashlea's keys were gone. And Chris explained, no, this is company policy. The locks are always changed after a key holder dies or is fired. To Cedillo, he thought it was most likely that whoever stole the keys didn't know about this policy when they took them. And that person was most likely Carter. Cedillo asked Chris if he happened to see Carter walk by, and he said he had not. Well, Cedillo felt like he was on the right track. He headed back to Carter's apartment complex to try to track her down, and it didn't take him long to find her. She was in the business office of the complex where the laundry facilities were located, and she was no longer wearing her black, baggy clothes. Instead, she was in bright pink scrubs. She willingly went back to the police station for questioning. Now, Cedillo started with very simple questions, just small talk. One of the first ones was whether she went by Carter or Carol, and she said Carter. Carol was her middle name. This woman was calm. She was pleasant. She appeared to be educated and well-spoken. And she also didn't seem to know why she was being questioned. She actually asked Cedillo why she was there. And he explained there had been a recent attempt at a robbery in the mall, and anyone who was there that day had to be questioned. Carter seemed to calm down after this. And then Cedillo eased back into the interview or interrogation. He asked Carter what she did for Thanksgiving and what she ate. And Carter just happily responded all about the turkey she made, that there was stuffing and mashed potatoes and green beans and green bean casserole and this cabbage bacon salad that her mother really liked to make. But she didn't think her boyfriend David liked it very much.
I made turkey, and there was stuffing and mashed potatoes and green bean casserole, and this cabbage bacon salad that my mom really likes to make, but I don't think David liked it very much.
Well, after this, Cedillo asked her where she went to school, and she said she attended West Texas A&M University. He wanted to know what brought her to Fort Worth, and she explained that she had a job opportunity with American Eagle. He knew there was much more to that story, but at the time of the interview, Cedillo didn't question her much about her answer. Carter actually did end up admitting she was let go in September due to leaving a door unlocked and a robber gaining access to the store. She also said she was the manager of the store, and we know that's not true. Now she told Cedillo she was doing volunteer work at a local hospital, thus explaining her scrubs. Instead of pressing her on any of the things he knew about David and Carter stealing from American Eagle, he asked her what her and her boyfriend did after Thanksgiving dinner, and Carter told him they watched movies until they went to bed. She seems so ordinary and so innocent in this interview. But at that point, Cedillo's questioning gets a little more serious. He asked Carter to walk him through what she had done that morning. She told him she woke up around 7:30, 7:45. She said she talked to David for a little while, and then she went back to sleep. And then when she woke up, David wasn't there. Well, Cedillo knew that this was a straight-up lie, so he let her know that. But Carter denied she was lying. She's like, "How is that a lie?" And Cedillo is like, "You know how I know it's a lie? Because I saw you come out of your apartment and get into your car with David. That's how I know it's a lie."
This morning.
Okay,
All right?
this morning.
Okay. What time do you get up?
About 7:30,
Okay.
7:45.
And then what happens then?
And then we talked, and I went back to sleep. When I woke up, he wasn't there.
Okay. I know that's a lie.
No, it's not.
You know why I know it's a lie?
Why do you know it's a
Because
lie?
I saw you come out of your apartment and get in the passenger seat of that car, and I saw him drive out of there. That's why I know it's a lie.
Well, Carter became irritated, saying that she knew what she did that morning. She wasn't lying. She knew where she went. She wasn't giving in to Cedillo's persistence, even though he told her she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life by lying to him. But she just wouldn't quit. She said, "No, I got up this morning, I put the laundry in, I went to check my email, and that's it."
I got up, I went and put the laundry in, and I went and checked my email. That's all. You found me on my apartment complex.
She said, you found me on the apartment premises. At this point, Detective Cedillo had had enough, and he left the room. This was a chance to leave Carter all alone and observe her actions, and she did something very strange and telling. She takes a sip from a water bottle, and then she kind of looks at it and immediately puts it down on the table, and then kind of spills some out on purpose. Grabs a tissue, acting like she's cleaning it up, only to wipe the part where she put her mouth on it. To Cedillo, this meant that she was worried that they were going to try to get a sample of her DNA and possibly find a match somewhere at the crime scene. It still wasn't hard proof of anything, though. So Detective Cedillo saw David in the hallway at the police station. He initially thought he was wearing a toboggan, but it turned out to be a ski mask. And it was apparently in new condition, without any noticeable wear, with a plastic price tag fastener still attached, and I'll get to why this is important. Photographs were taken of David, and they showed that he had a fresh injury to his lower lip, which was swollen. Unfortunately, at this point in time, Cedillo had nothing but a bad feeling, so he couldn't hold them there. David was processed on his misdemeanor charge, and then he and Carter were free to go. But by this time, that search warrant for the apartment that the couple resided in, as well as their cars and their cell phones, had gone through. They had more than enough probable cause after these interviews, and I told you the evidence would be shocking. But before I tell you the details, I want to tell you about Ashlea's autopsy results. So Dr. Richard Fries, a deputy medical examiner at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's Office, performed the autopsy on Ashlea's body. The autopsy revealed she had numerous injuries, and I didn't want to leave any of them out. She had a laceration on the right side of her scalp, a small cut with a surrounding bruise also on the right side of her scalp, a patterned bruise on the right side of her face, a bruise right between her eyes, another bruise around her left eye, a small incision across the bridge of her nose, a laceration across her right cheek with a bruise surrounding that area, a scrape on the right side of her nose and her upper lip, a bruise on her right upper lip, a laceration on the left side of her face, a scrape and a laceration on both of her lips, a scrape mark on her chin, a star-shaped laceration with a surrounding bruise behind her left ear, which was consistent with being pistol whipped, a cut on the right side of her neck, which was caused by a knife or a sharp-bladed weapon, a bruise on the right side of her neck, bruises and abrasions on the left side of her neck, and I wish I was done, but I'm not. She also had petechiae, or broken blood vessels, on her neck, in her eyes, and on her throat area. She had a bruise on the front of her chest, a bruise on her right arm, a scrape on that elbow, a bruise on the back of her left arm, and a bruise on the back of her left hand. another bruise at the base of her left thumb, which was likely due to the duct tape that was around her wrist. She also had an abrasion on her left pinky finger, a cut in the inside of her upper lip, additional lacerations and bruises on the inner lower lip, and most notably, fractured cricoid cartilage in her larynx. Now, Dr. Fries concluded that the injuries observed on different parts of Ashlea's face indicated they were caused by multiple blows. He explained that the petechiae in her eyes reflected asphyxia or strangulation, and this would have occurred by someone actually tying a cord or a rope around her neck and squeezing tightly. According to the doctor, it would take quite a while and quite a bit of pressure for someone to be fully asphyxiated. And this fracture in this part of her neck was the least common place where they see fractures for asphyxia or strangulation type deaths. It's because it consists of cartilage that's pliable. He explained that these kind of fractures are mostly seen in motor vehicle accidents or something involving a very significant amount of force. The sample of Ashlea's aorta blood that Dr. Fries tested was negative for carbon monoxide. This indicated that Ashlea was not alive when the fire was set. But since there were burn marks on her body that were not made by a taser, for instance, someone intentionally attempted to set her body on fire after she was deceased. Dr. Fries concluded that Ashlea's cause of death was asphyxia and blunt force trauma to her head and neck, and the manner of death was, of course, a homicide. Wow. All of this was incredibly horrific. This poor woman, it's unreal that a human being could do this to another human being. And over what? Well, money, of course, because that seemed to be the motive in this case. The first search that was conducted was of David and Carter's apartment. Now, during the first search on November 29th, Detective Matthew Barron with the Fort Worth Police Department Homicide Unit saw a plastic tub near the front door, and it contained bungee cords, rope, and he found a lock located in the kitchen drawer. In the trash, he found a box associated with a taser and a charging cord, which is why I brought it up in the medical examiner report, stating there were no taser marks on Ashlea's body. Detective Barron also found some strands of duct tape, which was collected and analyzed to see if it matched the duct tape found on Ashlea's wrists and ankles. A damaged deadbolt lock was found in the apartment, along with 2 additional locks that had apparently been for practice. It included one conveniently labeled lock-picking practice lock. I am not kidding. You'd think that criminals or wannabe criminals would be smarter than this, but there was something else found during this search of the apartment, a significant discovery: credit card receipts. And this led investigators to these locations that were listed on these receipts, and through footage captured on CCTV, the detectives were able to determine that on November 21st, just days before Ashlea's murder, Carter was seen on video purchasing several items that appear to be part of what they call a murder kit. Things like short-handed shovels, gloves, a tarp, and duct tape. Wow. I wondered if their plan had been even deeper, because why did they need shovels? It's eerie. I think there should be some kind of silent alarm or something that goes off when someone buys too many incriminating items all at once, but I guess one could argue you need those for some everyday gardening or home improvements. I still think that somehow stores should keep track of that. But now onto the search of Carter's Black Infiniti, which was conducted by Officer J.J. Jeans with the Fort Worth Police Department Crime Scene Unit. He took photos of items that were found in the vehicle, including a plastic bag inside of a black trash bag, a sharpening stone for a knife, a 9mm cartridge, a cell phone, a walkie-talkie, several knives. One was a folding pocket knife, another was a buck knife with a sheath. There was also a plastic tub with some men's boots that had what looked like blood on them, and another cell phone inside those boots. Some clothing, a toboggan with a hole cut in it, a tarp still inside its package, and a kitchen knife. It is not looking good for David and Carter. Not at all. Then under the driver's seat, Officer Jeans found a loaded Glock 19 with a bullet in the chamber. The officer also found various documents in the car, including a receipt reflecting an order from a lock picker's mall for a cutaway practice lock that was sent to the address of the apartment where the couple lived. And we know that one was found there. There was also a lock-picking instruction manual found during the search of the vehicle, and the floor mat from the driver's side revealed what looked like the presence of blood. So it was sent to the lab for analysis along with those men's boots. Now, when they searched David's Cadillac, they opened the trunk and they found that pair of shovels that Carter had been seen purchasing. And guess what? they had been used. There was dirt on both of them, as well as bungee cords and zip ties in the back, and a box of plastic sheeting and a box of Craftsman sockets. To Cedillo, this looked like all the items you would need to wrap up a dead body, but we know they never got that chance with Ashlea. So was there a second victim that we didn't know about? Now onto the cell phones. In the photo roll for both David and Carter's phones, there were pictures of Ashlea's apartment complex, including photos of her front door. Clearly, they had been casing her apartment complex weeks before the murder. And then when they looked through texts between the couple, things got worse. The two seemed to be texting about their plan to hurt Ashlea, but they were doing it so casually, like they were talking about having dinner. At one point, Carter says that she just picked up the supplies, including zip ties, bungee cords, shovels, and a plastic tarp. The key about these text messages, though, was that they were purposely vague. No one text message had enough to implicate them in a crime. For example, a special agent with the FBI and a member of the cellular analysis survey team found a text between David and Carter's phones that was sent at 11:52 a.m. on November 28, which was hours after Ashlea was found dead. And here's how that exchange went. Carter texted, "Hey, remember that thing you said I didn't clean well? Did you clean it? Did we leave it behind?" And David responded with, "We left it. I didn't touch it." And Carter texts back, "Well, damn. That's not good. Take out all the trash and leave that." Then 5 minutes go by, and then Carter texts David again and says, "David, I need to take care of that. I'm so sorry I forgot." If all of this wasn't enough, there was one more piece that fell into place after the contents of David's cell phone was analyzed even further. One of the text messages he sent to Carter from his phone contained latitude and longitude coordinates. And after entering them into Google Earth, Detective Cedillo drove to that specific location, which was near Luders, Texas. And when he arrived at the intersection of the coordinates, he discovered a hole in the ground, which he described as a prepared human grave. It was approximately 6 feet long and 2.5 feet wide and 3 feet deep. That is unbelievable. And based on everything that they had gathered, this is what they believed happened. After Carter was fired, she and David started to plot revenge on Ashlea. They decided they were going to kill her and they were going to take her keys so they could break into American Eagle again. And the pair chose Black Friday because Carter knew that it was when the safe would have the most money inside. So in the early morning hours of November 28, Carter and David both entered Ashlea's apartment. She could have still been awake from the time Alexis left around 5 a.m., but we know she told her she was going to try to take a nap. Either way, when the couple entered, Ashlea was alerted and a fight ensued. Ashlea put up more resistance than they expected, which resulted in an excessive force used by the couple. Not only was Ashlea pistol whipped and stabbed, her throat had also been slit. Because more time had passed than they had imagined and the fight was more intense than they anticipated, they changed their original plan and they decided not to bury Ashlea, but instead they were going to start a fire at the last minute as an afterthought, just like the fire inspector predicted. On the way out, they took Ashlea's keys and they locked her front door. Later that morning, when Carter went to the mall, she planned on quickly getting into the American Eagle safe using Ashlea's key. She was going to grab that money and then quickly change out of her darker clothes into those pink scrubs she was found in later. However, she didn't anticipate that those locks would be changed so soon. She left the mall and she saw David being questioned by the police, so she walked home alone. To confirm his suspicions, Cedillo has the mall pull footage from inside American Eagle and outside in the parking lot. And sure enough, they see that person that matches Carter's height and body type, dressed in black pants and wearing a gray sweatshirt with a black scarf and something wrapped around their face, swiftly walking up to the roll-down gate in front of American Eagle at around 8 a.m. on the morning after Black Friday and the day after Ashlea was found dead. This person kneels down and tries to unlock the lock, clearly not knowing that corporate had changed the locks after Ashlea's body was found. Once they realize the key didn't work, they quickly get up and walk away. Now on the footage from the exterior of the mall, it catches a person matching Carter's description, now wearing those same pink scrubs and that gray sweatshirt wrapped around her waist that Carter was seen wearing at her apartment complex when Cedillo brought her in for questioning. It's the same exact outfit, so it's her. So it stands to reason it's also her inside trying to unlock that gate. She changed real quick before exiting the mall, and then she escaped the mall before anyone could catch her, and she walked all the way back to her apartment. I was thinking she could have gone through the back hallways of the mall because I know when I worked at Abercrombie, there was an entire back area of the mall where deliveries would come in. After gathering all of this evidence, Detective Cedillo secured an arrest warrant for both Carter and David December 4th, 2014, charging them with capital murder. Shortly after the arrest warrant was secured, a second search was conducted on Carter's apartment. This time, a business-type key was found in the kitchen trash can. This key opened the dressing rooms and the storage closet at American Eagle and Hewlin Mall. The key was not in the trash during the first search of the apartment, most likely because Carter was still in possession of it at the time. Now, 2 days later, on December 6th, David was taken into custody, and later that day, Carter turned herself in, with her lawyer present, as a show of good faith. And at this point, does it really matter? But I guess she had to do something. Both were booked and given $500,000 bond while they awaited their trial. They were tried separately, but the evidence presented was almost exactly the same. The only difference was in their defenses, which I'll get to in a moment because I think it's pretty interesting. The prosecution showed that there was no difference between the fibers, the adhesive, the backing, the width, or the color of the duct tape found in the trash at Carter's and the duct tape found on Ashlea's body, so they could have originated from the same roll. The swabs of blood taken from the floor mat and the Infinity revealed that the partial major DNA profile originated from Ashlea Harris. Her blood was also found on the boots in the car, which suggested David traced it from in her apartment to the front seat as he got in and drove away. The DNA profile obtained from the swab of the grip of the Glock 19 that was found in the Infinity was a mixture of David and Ashlea's DNA. Carter was excluded as the contributor, which suggested that David had used the gun to pistol whip Ashlea. I told you the evidence in both trials were the same, but the defenses were different. Well, despite her lawyer's protests, Carter wanted to take the stand and testify. She presented a very different story than the one the prosecution had laid out. She claimed that she only acted under David's orders, that she was scared of him. According to Carter, even when they lived back in their hometown, David had power over her. He controlled what she ate, what she drank, when she slept, and he forced her to rehire him when she moved to Fort Worth.
I was very afraid of David. I thought he was going to kill me, telling me what to drink, what to eat, and he made me have sex with him in the movie theater.
He had masterminded the original robbery as well. On the day that Ashlea was killed, she said she woke up and David was nowhere to be found. When he eventually came home, he handed her the American Eagle keys and told her she needed to go to that store and take the deposit. At first, she said she refused, but then he pointed the gun in her face and said it again. Carter claimed that she again refused, but according to her, David became even more sinister. He told her he would kill her. And on top of that, there was someone sitting outside of her parents' house right then and there. She had to do exactly what he said, or her and her parents would die.
Gave me some gloves, told me to put them on, and then he handed me a set of American Eagle keys. And he said, go in and open the gate and bring me that fat-ass deposit. And he just pointed it at me. I shook my head, but I wasn't going to do it. And he said, you don't understand. If you don't go in, I'm going to kill them, and then I'm going to kill you.
She felt like at that point she had no other choice but to steal the money. She described how upset she was when she realized the locks had been changed, but she said it was because she didn't know what David would do when he found out. Carter concluded her version of the story by making a startling revelation to the court. She claimed that David had brought two individuals that she referred to as, quote, ghetto, end quote, men into her house with the intention of sexually violating her. This shocking allegation was apparently a part of David's plan to silence her regarding the details of Ashlea's murder.
Somebody pushed me down right when I got into the apartment. He said, I'll make her follow directions. He took off my sweatpants and pulled them down to my ankles. And they raped me. I was screaming.
Carter even tried to explain away her actions at the police station, specifically wiping down that water bottle, because according to her, that was not an attempt to remove her DNA evidence. Instead, she clarified it was an act that was driven by a powerful memory of that violation she experienced, which caused her to feel the need to eliminate any lingering scent associated with the traumatic experience. A nice try, but she could have been an actress instead of a wannabe criminal mastermind, because she might be able to cry on cue, but she was an amateur when it came to being a murderer. She left a ton of evidence behind. Her story didn't explain the text messages that she exchanged that dated back weeks before the murder took place. There were also messages after the murder that indicated she had been present in the apartment, even though she said she was never there during Ashlea's murder. At the end of it all, the jury did not believe her story, and it sealed her fate. It took the jury less than 2 hours to deliberate before they unanimously agreed on a verdict of guilty for Carter. And his defense attempted to pin everything on Carter. The jury saw through this desperate attempt to excuse away such horrific actions, and they found him guilty of Ashlea's murder. Both he and his little girlfriend were handed identical sentences of life in prison without the possibility of parole. They were so young, and so was Ashlea. They all had so much of their lives to live. I don't understand the reasoning and the thinking. I know that they're young, 19 and 25 years old. Why would you ever think that money is worth taking somebody's life and not even thinking about your future, spending the rest of your life in prison? And this is only a small bit of justice. Ashlea deserves so much more. Her family wanted to see them get the death penalty, but they understood it doesn't always work that way. And they were grateful to all the law enforcement officers involved for seeing it all the way through to the end. They were glad that Ashlea's killers were behind bars. For her mother, Monica, she holds on to the memory of the last time she saw Ashlea. It was a week before her murder. She had called her mom and she asked her to come play bingo, and Monica almost didn't go. She felt like she had so much on her plate, but she listened to her gut and she decided to spend time with her daughter, and she will forever be grateful that she did. She'll always remember walking in and seeing the big smile on Ashlea's face and telling her, "I love you," one last time. Nowadays, Monica tries to remember her daughter in a very unique way. Even though she initially struggled with Ashlea's sexuality, she embraced the women in her life that she loved and loved her so much. Her ex-girlfriends, Laura and April. Monica takes both of them to bingo hall on a regular basis, and April has even mentioned that sometimes Monica will refer to her as her daughter. For all of them, when they gather together, they truly feel like Ashlea is still with them. And that is one thing that made me smile after all of the terrible things that we learned happened to poor Ashlea. In light of everything that happened to her, many of her closest friends believe that her tattoo of that Bible verse is very upsetting. I read it to you in the beginning. It's Jeremiah 29:11, and it reads, quote, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future," end quote. A few of Ashlea's friends have mentioned that she talked about feeling like she was going to die young. She couldn't explain why she felt that way or when, but she thought it was going to happen. She just believed that it was true. No one really knows what to make of this or her chosen verse to tattoo on her body. They just know that Ashlea was a beautiful soul who was taken too soon from this world. These cases always make me sad because there is so much life for these people to live and so unfair. It's unbelievable how much greed can make someone do. I thank you all so much for being here for Ashlea's story. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. I will see you in my next video. Bye.